good afternoon and today is not a virtual background, it's a real background because I am in our farm, and the name of the farm is a Paradise Farm. So in this COVID-19, it's good also to have a fresh air. And I am happy that we have this webinar with you, Dr. Jens Clausen. Please warm welcome from the Phnom Penh Vicariate and Sample Institute. And it is very important subject, UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And I believe that during this COVID-19, it is also important to have a reflection about the person with disabilities, because sometimes maybe we forget them. Access to the vaccination, access to the service, and take care when they are sick, because I listen that many countries sometimes it's a big problem also when they are sick with COVID-19 or other sickness also, because COVID-19 make a problem in many hospitals, and especially here in Cambodia. Kiom som swa kum bon pote odel chorum na treni kiom kata protein bot ni no knong pariaka COVID-19 ni pupendo yatanei chepise somra bon pondel kompong min panha pika rapiep yang khơiសម្រាប់ពួកគាត់ក៏ពិបាកដែរនឹងពេលគេមាន COVID-19 ក្តីឬពេលគេត្រូវការទៅព្យាបាលប្រចាំជំងឺសប្តាហ៍ក្រុមយើងដែលធ្លាប់ទៅតាក់មកប្រចាំក៏ពិបាកដែរពីពុំសុខសាន្តយបិទពីប៉ុន្មានខែហើយយើងទៅសុខទុក្ខតាមផ្ទះប៉ុន្តែយើងឃើញបញ្ហាច្រើនដូចជា I am happy to have you today. It's very important. We have a small village near Sample Institute called Peace Village with children daycare center for the children with disabilities. And we see that during this COVID-19, we have to close our activities, but we go to visit them at home. But for us, it's difficult also to send them to the main hospital at Takmau, the CVM of Caritas. Because of the difficulties of COVID-19. So it's good to have a reflection about the right of disabilities people, especially in this time. So God bless you all, and we can start this important meeting. Thanks so much. Take care and God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop. Thank you, Bishop. Yeah.
Thank you, Bishop. So thank you very much again. And the next, I would like to invite Mr. Principal to have a welcome speech and introduction to the participant and with interaction. Please.
ជំរាបសួរជាបឋមជំរាបសួរលោកវិបាលលោកឪពុកបងប្រុសបងស្រី Good afternoon to all participants in Cambodia, and good mornings to all participants from Freiburg, Germany. So in Germany, it's 10 a.m. in the mornings. And I would like to respect to His Excellency Bishop Olivier, Reverend Father, brother, sister, representative from NGO, especially from Caritas Cambodia, from different provinces of Cambodia, students and staff from St. Paul Institute, and a student from University of Applied Science in Freiburg, Germany. And through our good collaboration between St. Paul Institute and Caritas Cambodia, furthermore through our good collaboration with Caritas Germany and Catholic University Applied Science in Freiburg, Germany, we SPI able to conduct this webinar conference today on the topic of UN Conventions on the Rights of Persons in Disabilities. I would like to take this opportunity to read very briefly the background and the history of this convention in order to let you know and start to prepare for you in order to listen to Dr. Professor Jens Clausen. As we all may know that the Convention on the Rights of the Person with Disability was adopted on the 13th December 2006 at the United Nations headquarters in New York, and was open for signature on the 30 March 2007. There was 82 signatories to the convention, 44 signatories to optional protocols, and 1 ratification of the convention. This is the highest number of signatory in the history of a UN Convention on its open days. It is the first comprehensive human rights treaty on the 21st century, and it is the first human rights conventions to be opened for signature by regional integration organization. The convention entered into force on 3 May 2008. The convention is to promote, protect, and ensure the full of equal enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedom by all persons with disability, and to promote respect for their inherent dignity. Persons with disability include those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments, which is interaction with various barriers may heighten their full and effective participation in society and the equal basic with others. However, some significant are putting in high consideration to discuss and implement in different projects and different levels in the world, such as communication, include language, sign language for deaf people, discrimination on the basis of disability, and respect for inherent dignity, individual autonomy, include freedom, and make one's own choice and independent person. Non-discrimination, full and effective participation and inclusion in society. Respect for different and acceptance for persons with disabilities as part of human diversity and humanities. Equality of opportunity, accessibility, equality between men and women. Respect for the involving capacity of children with disability, and respect for the rights of children with disability to preserve their identity. Truly, in the year 2016, marked the 10th anniversary of adoption of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, CRPD. And this year, 2021, was the 14th session of the conference in the last June. So we can imagine how much work has been done and still continue to implement in purpose to make all people respect to the rights of persons with disability. I am sure today is the best time to learn and understand more about UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability through a lecture from Professor Dr. Jens Clausen. Dear Bishop, Father, Brother, Sister, and all participants, I am very pleased to introduce our guest speaker today is Professor Dr. Jens Clausen from Freiburg, Germany. He found his PhD at the Department of Education of the University Master, Germany. Currently, Professor Dr. Jens Clausen is the Professor for Curative and Therapeutic Education. His lecture include the history and the methods of curative education, the actual debates on inclusion and participation of people with special needs, the methods of individual assistance and community care is the field of daily living and working. The aims to eliminate discrimination and disadvantage and to remove barriers to participation is the main topic for his research. One special of his focus is the question how to create or find jobs are suitable and accessible to people with special needs. Professor Dr. Jens Clausen is the Professor for Curative and Therapeutic Education for people with special needs at the Catholic University of Applied Science in Freiburg, Germany. He also a professor for education of people with special needs at the University of Applied Science in Bochum, Germany in 2010 to 2012. So now I would like to give conference to him, Dr. Professor Jens Clausen. I give the microphones to you. Please welcome Professor Dr. Jens Clausen. I give the floor to you. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Sofalfon. for this invitation and for the mentioning of my academic career. I'm glad that we started with this cooperation a couple of years ago, and perhaps, yeah, we can even go further with this cooperation in the next couple of years. We learn from you, you learn from us, and together perhaps we can exchange experiences about people with disabilities in our countries and worldwide. And so it's still a big target for us and for you to create living circumstances for people with disabilities that they can participate in all areas of the society. As Bishop Olivier mentioned, thank you very much, Bishop, for the entrance words. As you mentioned in the beginning, we do have many problems with COVID-19 and people with disabilities worldwide, and also in Germany, all the schools had to close, all the sheltered workshops had to close, and so people with disabilities stayed at home with their families for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it was a very special situation and many problems worldwide, although our living conditions are much better than in other parts of the world, of course. But we do have problems in our special cases, of course. So, well, I sent you my my presentation. Can we start the presentation now from Cambodia, or shall I start it here?
You can start for sharing from you, Professor. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, very nice picture here.
Okay, so can we start by this, or?
Yeah. If you are convenient with this, that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, we started to work together a few years ago when we had no idea what COVID-19 was about. When you came to Freiburg to meet us and to have a seminar together, and we invited you for our lectures. And so we started with our cooperation and thought that we might visit you in Cambodia as well, but then COVID-19 came along and we couldn't travel to see you at Cambodia. So this was the idea to a fundamental cooperation without visiting, but also just on Zoom conferences and so on. And so the day today is the idea to talk about this convention. And as you mentioned before, the convention started, or the work to establish the convention started more than 20 years ago at the United Nations, when an ad hoc committee was founded to write down the convention. And many students ask me very often, what about this special convention for special persons with disabilities? Why do you not use the Declaration of Human Rights or the Social Convention? Why did they write an extra convention for people with disabilities? Is this not a contradiction to the idea of inclusion? And it might seem so, but it is a convention that underlines all the human rights and only points out that these human rights have to be adopted for people with disabilities. It is the Human Rights Convention in a way, only new written for people with disabilities. Before we take a look on several articles on the convention, I would like to point out the shift from the medical model of disability towards a social model, and then towards a human rights model of disability. The medical model, which the CRPD tries to overcome, regards disability as an impairment that needs to be treated, cured, fixed, or rehabilitated. And disability is seen as a deviation from the normal health status. In fact, it is true. It's not wrong, this medical model. Of course, to be blind, to be deaf, or to be mentally ill means that it is a deviation from the normal health status. But for many, many years, according to this medical model, it was only a job for doctors, nurses, special education teachers to help these individuals. But disability is not a problem of the individual. It is a problem of society. And so many years before the convention was set up at the United Nations, as Sofal Fong pointed out in 2006, many years before, they worked on a kind of social model of disability. And they said the social model of disability explains that disability is a social construct through discrimination and oppression. Disability should not be regarded as only a human problem of the individual, but as a human variation. And the social model differentiates between impairment and disability. And while the first relates to a condition of the body or the mind, the second is the result of the way the environment and society respond to that impairment. Exclusion of disabled persons from society is politically analyzed as the result of barriers and discrimination. And this is quite a difference, not looking on the individual, but on the barriers and the environment. But we do not stop here with the social model, but go further on, as my colleague from Bochum, Theresia Degener, pointed out. The human rights model of disability goes one step further on. The CRPD marks a paradigm shift by addressing the human rights of persons with disabilities from a progressive social model approach to disability. And it develops it further. The human rights model embraces impairment as a condition which might reduce the quality of life. Of course, it does, but which belongs to humanity and thus must be valued as part of human variation. And this is very important. Disability is not a kind of deviation. It's a kind of variation of the human life. And the goal of the CRPD, in order to implement the goals of the CRPD, a cooperative interaction of all political and civil society forces is required. This cannot be done by doctors. This cannot be done by social workers or by nurses. To change the environment and to change the point of view of the society needs a good cooperation between all the political and civil society forces in one society. And as we talked about it yesterday on a conference, it also needs the view of those who are affected, a kind of peer support. You need people with disabilities. You need people to learn from their experiences. It's not a political and it's not a social workers' affair only. You need the cooperation between people with disabilities as the peers with their experience in society. I always talk to my students about autism, people with autism. And we learned so much about autism by the people themselves. We did not know much about their special habits and so on before they showed us what kind of experiences they do every day. So learning by the people who are affected, learning by the peers is much more necessary than we thought about it in early times. What is the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities about? It's an international treaty, and it acknowledges that all disabled persons are right holders. It's not a special way of care. It's not a special way to change our care system. It's first of all necessary to look as the people with disabilities as right holders. Of course, there are many hurdles to overcome that they can participate in all parts of society, but they have the right to do. They have the right to participate. And I think that when you talk about inclusion, you always talk about inclusion and participation. It's always these two words together, inclusion and participation, I think. This, as Sophia von pointed out in the beginning, this convention is really something special, signed at the first day by many countries. Now we have about 180 countries signed this treaty. It is an obligation for the states to promote, to protect, and to ensure the rights. It's not a kind of vision for far beyond. It is an obligation. So it gives us, I think, a good, it gives us a very good political and civil society basis to discuss it with the politicians. The convention not only clarifies that states should not discriminate against persons with disabilities, it also sets up many steps that states must take to create an enabling environment so that persons with disabilities can enjoy real equality in society. This is already mentioned to ensure accessibility of the physical environment and information and communications as well. Inclusion and participation, as I mentioned before, should always be in one line. These two words stick together. And we overcome a kind of negative understanding of disability. It is now a kind of human right, as I said. Some people mentioned some statements about the convention. So Michael Perlin from New York said the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities is the most important international human rights document ever drafted and ratified on the behalf of persons with disabilities. It is, I think, and it is worldwide seen as that. The CRPD brings hope to the vulnerable. I hope more than hope, that we can do more than only belong on their hopes. And the CRPD provides a moral compass for positive change and a new perspective to think about and treat persons with disabilities. This is Gerald Quinn from Dublin, Ireland, who is one of the committee members in this CRPD. And Mrs. Weller from Melbourne, Australia says, the CRPD gives us a modern conception on human rights and shows the politicians how to implement human rights for persons with disabilities. It's a kind of roadmap to a new society, if one can say so. In the last 15 years, step by step, many nations gave their signatures and ratifications to this document. But that does not mean that the CRPD is already implemented fully, of course. It takes a long, long time. As you see, the USA only signed but did not ratify the convention. Other nations as well. It took a long time to put it into the official social right of a nation. Also, Switzerland and other nations had problems with the ratification because they had to change many parts of their social rights system in order to implement the CRPD. I look at the last sentence of this slide. All state parties are obliged to submit regular reports to the committee. That means that it's not only a kind of idea to put out the new rights, but the states have to find out in a way how this is implemented in reality in their society, and they have to write regular reports to the committee that they can research, do the research in every nation. And this means there is not only the CRPD, but also the optional protocol of the convention. And the optional protocol established two procedures aimed at strengthening the implementation and monitoring of the convention. The first is an individual communication procedure, allowing individuals to bring petitions to the committee claiming breaches of their right. So every individual is forced or is allowed to send a letter to the committee when the person sees failures and disadvantages being a disabled person in their society. And the second is an inquiry procedure giving the committee authority to undertake inquiries of grave or systematic violations on the convention. So every 5 years, a nation has to write down a kind of report on this optional protocol. Those who have signed this, not every nation has, but those who have signed the optional protocol do write their systematic report to the committee. And as a monitoring mechanism, the convention provides 18 members committee. This is the optional protocol committee. The committee monitors compliances with the provisions of the convention. In particular, it examines the reports to be periodically prepared by the member states on the status of implementation of the convention. Who can write down these reports? It's a task of the state party, but they need information from various actors. So in addition to the report of the state, the committee also draws on documents submitted by the nation human rights institutions and, which is very important, self-advocacy organizations of persons with disabilities. And this is very important. I do not know how the situation is in Cambodia about self-advocacy organizations of people, of persons with disabilities, but they are quite necessary for a good report because it's their experience to be written down. May I ask, how is the situation about self-advocacy organizations? Are they important in Cambodia?
Maybe I asked someone from Caritas or any NGO that joined this webinar have a response to the question of Professor.
Professor, would you state the question again, please?
Professor, yeah.
Well, I can try it again. If you want to have good reports about the situation of the implementation of the CRPD, you need persons in society with disabilities who can write down their own experiences. And it's better not to be alone with this experience, but to join together and found a group of people with disabilities together and write down their reports. And I think this could be a good target for students, for instance, of social work, to empower people with disabilities that they establish self-advocacy organizations. Is this an idea, perhaps? I don't know. It is often
Father
very
Charles,
difficult. Yeah.
Father Charles, you have any reaction or response to what Professor asked, Father?
Well, I most certainly agree.
Yeah.
I work with deaf people here, and that is a major focus for us right now. We're being funded in a lot of our programming by the Finnish Association of the Deaf that gets their money from the Foreign Ministry of Finland. And they're very anxious to establish a national association of the deaf so that deaf people can speak for themselves and advocate for themselves. And that's what we're trying to do now. Our programming has been trying to identify deaf people who could be potential leaders and who can speak for and publicize the experience of the deaf people in Cambodia. It's been very difficult for us because it is very difficult for deaf people to go to school in Cambodia. Less than 3% of the deaf population here have ever been to school. And so getting people who can speak for themselves is really, really difficult. I like your idea about involving social work students or some sort of interns or someone like that to work with different disability groups to help them to record their experience. I think that is so valuable. You know, your point is that people with disabilities need to speak for themselves. Their voices are heard much more clearly when they speak rather than for us to speak for them. So I like your idea tremendously. And the St. Paul Institute, they've got the social work program there. Maybe that's something that some of their students could do. I like that idea. Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you for your remarks, because I think this whole CRPD would not have been written out without people of disabilities in the ad hoc committee. It was the first convention which was written out by people who were affected by their own situation, and so it's very, very important on the middle and the long term to involve people with disabilities in their self-advocacy organizations. But it takes a long time to build this up. We had the idea of building up self-advocacy organizations for people with autism, and they try to well, they are very much on their own, and it's for them it's a big task to meet in a group, and so it took a long time that we had to build up self-advocacy groups for people with autism, but it works now in Freiburg. Yeah.
May I add a footnote?
Yeah.
One of my staff at program is called the Deaf Development Program under the Catholic group of Maryknoll. And one of our staff, when we first started getting funding from the Finnish Association of the Deaf, they sent a team to evaluate and monitor our progress. And they hired a deaf man from Australia to come with an interpreter. And they worked with us for a couple of years. And then he became the president of the World Federation of the Deaf. And in that capacity, he was in New York helping to write the CRPD. So we've had a very direct connection with the convention, because one of our former staff, helped to write it. Then he came back and explained that to the deaf people here.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. It's a convention written by those people, and this is quite important for the whole CRPD. I have the same experience with Theresia Degner, who was part of those who in New York writing down the convention. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Can I say something on this?
Yes, Mr. Ratana.
I think this point is important. In Cambodia, the Cambodian government have ratified the CRPD in 2012, I think in December 2012, and it's become effective in early 2013. And it's implementing by the Ministry of Social Affairs and also the national, what they call Disability Action Council. Yeah. And also with the participation of civil society. So we have CDPO, we have the Handicap Internationals, and many human rights organizations also, like the ad hoc, the at the organization. And regarding the report, I think that the report has been written annually by the Ministry of Social Affairs and DAC on the situation of the person with disability. And I think in Cambodia, the national government implementing the national, what they call the national strategy on disability for the second term already. So 2014, 2018, and 2019, 2023, I think. So it's implementing. And we have also the individuals advocacy group, like here we have the Parent Association of the Children with Autism. So they are formed and working closely with Caritas, CCAMH, and they also working closely with a DAC, the Cambodian Disability Action Council. Yeah, and we also closely working with the National Disability Strategic Plan, with I think with focus on promotion of the access, promotion of the equal access of the person with disability to equal access to economic, to social, to education and political, etc. And also in the protection of the right of the people with disability, because Cambodia, I think, implementing disability law. So Cambodia have different disability policy and disability law to protect the mistreatment, the abuse, and also all forms of exploitation. Yeah, but still a lot of issue, a lot of problem. For accessibility and a lot of things to work in order to build an inclusive society.
Yeah. And this,
I'd like to add something also. In Siem Reap, we are working, making mutual health groups. So we work in the community in 10 villages, and we try to make joining the people with disability, but all kind, physical, mental, social, HIV/AIDS, and all kind of discriminated people working together with non-disabled and making mutual help group working on rights of the people with disability or their barrier, working with health center and schools, and also making them working on their livelihoods together and making a microcredit all together. So the inclusion with the non-disabled, but mostly they're all poor and all kind of disability. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. And this is what I meant on the road to inclusion and participation. There are many steps to go, and it needs a very, very good cooperation, I think, or cooperative interaction between political and civil society members, forces. They are required to build up a society of inclusion and participation for and with disabled people. Okay. The guiding principles of the convention are respect for inherent dignity, individual autonomy, freedom to make one's own choices, and independence of persons. I think this was mentioned before. Non-discrimination, full and effective participation and inclusion in society, and so on and so on. Equality between men and women, respect for the evolving capacities of children with disabilities. These are, as Article 3 mentions, the guiding principles of the convention. Let us now see some basic considerations. The UNCRPD states that approximately 1 billion people with disabilities live worldwide. This is about 15% of the world's population. It's a kind of the largest minority on earth, you can say. And a large proportion of them, let's say 80%, live in low-income countries and have poorer health care, lower levels of schooling, and poorer than people without disabilities. Only 36 out of 94 countries have disability and anti-discrimination laws. This is also a kind of roadmap to which has to be gone. And only 32% of all countries in the world have legally regulated forms of support for people with disabilities. This is what the UNCRPD states now at the moment. Disability and poverty are often go together in many, many countries of the world, of course. And in many countries, as you mentioned, Mr. Dittmeier, before, many children have no access to schools and so on. Many people have no access to working opportunities and so on. And there is much work to be done. Article number 1 is the article of the purpose of the targets of the of this convention, and you see the UN Assembly Hall in the middle of this small picture, and you see on the left-hand side Mrs. Theresia Degner, who was a colleague of mine in Bochum, and she was part of the committee, of the ad hoc committee to write down the convention. And also on the right-hand side, you see Tom Shakespeare from Great Britain, who was also one of the committee members. The purpose of the Present Convention is to promote, to protect, and to ensure the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms by all persons with disabilities. Persons with disabilities include those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments, which, in interaction with various barriers, may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. This is a kind of definition of disability in the Article 1 of the Convention. I take a short brief to some articles. I think this could be helpful to find our way through the convention. Article 8 means we all need a kind of awareness rising, including at the family level regarding persons with disabilities, and to foster respect to the rights and dignity of persons with disabilities. We have to combat stereotypes, prejudices, harmful practices relating to persons with disabilities, including those based on sex and age in all areas of life. We still have a lot of prejudices and harmful practices, I think, in all countries of the world. And this article means also we have to promote awareness of the capabilities and contributions of persons with disabilities. What can they give in and for the society? What is their part in the society? How can they contribute to a better life in society? They do not only need help, they can contribute and they can put in their capabilities into the society life. When you think about this awareness rising article, you can think that it should be necessary to talk about people with disabilities on TV, on the radio, in books and in newspapers or on the internet. You can learn about their experiences. But what about the idea to train people with disabilities, for instance, as journalists? They can speak for themselves. They can be part of the system of newspapers, TV, or radio groups, and so they can talk on their own and not talking about them, but hear from them about their situation in their life with disabilities. So it's a kind of idea to practice with people with disabilities, that they be part of the information system on TV, on radio, in the internet, and so on. It could be also an idea for students of social work that they make a small kind of movie with people with disabilities and interviewing them about their life system, and put this in the internet or on TV, on a TV show, that they can speak for themselves. Perhaps a kind of project for social workers in their academic career at the St. Paul's Institute. The Article 19, I picked out some articles that could be useful to know more about it. This is a kind of article which is perhaps more important for us in Europe than in Cambodia, because I would like to say this to the students in Cambodia who do not know the situation in Europe, perhaps. In the last 150 years, many people with disabilities were put into special homes, in very big clinic situations, and were rather excluded from society, and they spent all their life in a kind of sheltered home or sheltered workshops and so on. But they had no access to the society. They were put in jail almost in the big clinic sets and so on. And it took 150 years of exclusion, and now we have to find our way to inclusion and participation. That means that we have to change this kind of institutions for people with disabilities, because they are not obliged to live in a particular living arrangement. They, people with disabilities should have the opportunity to live in the community and be part of the community, and not to be living in particular special arrangements. The school system is also one of which should be changed quite on a very basic way. So living independently, being included in the community, means we have to change our institutions, and people who have been living for 50 years in these kind of institutions might sometimes say, oh, it's okay for me living here with 20 others in a group or so, but this is not the situation which can be allowed for further going on. A couple of months ago, a 60-year-old woman came to me and showed me her card for the bank automat. You say so? Bank for getting money from the bank, and she was 60 years old, and she spent 50 out of her 60 years she spent in a special particular living clinic, and never got out there for 50 years. And after 50 years of being almost in prison, only because she was disabled, mentally disabled, one doctor thought when she was 10 years old, she spent 50 years in a kind of clinic, and then she came to me and said, oh, Mr. Clausen, nice to see you. Look at this. Now I have a card for my bank account. Can you imagine? After 50 years of being in prison, I can be on my own, and I can live on my own, and I can go to the bank and get my own money. It was such a difference in her life, and this was a kind of symbol. This bank account card was a kind of symbol for her independent living possibility now. The next article is about personal mobility, which is quite a target. This is not very easy to achieve in any country, I think. But people should be mobile on their own. They should the access to every building, to every healthcare system should be easy, to every transport system. But this means quite a lot of change in our cars, in our buses, in our streets, and in our buildings, that everybody is able to have the access to every building and so on. This is really a big target. Talking about education, we have to change our education system. The last 100 years, we put children with special needs into special schools. And now we think about how to get them back into regular schools with all the other children, because for most of them, it is a kind of new learning, being together with their neighbor kids, being together in the school, together with kids without disabilities, and to learn from them and to learn together. Some people, some kids say, I need some special, of course, some special help. The deaf people say, I need some special school system, for instance, and so on. But for most of the children, inclusive education is a big deal and a good target. And our school system has to be changed now. And it takes years and years to build a new inclusive school system. This is what the article says about education, and it means not also education for children, but lifelong education. And persons with disabilities, children with disabilities, should not be excluded from the general education system. Persons with disabilities should have access to an inclusive, quality, and free primary education and secondary education system on an equal basis with others in the communities in which they live. Many people, many children are taken by buses from their village, from their neighborhood into the special schools, being separated from their neighborhood kids. And this should be, it's a big change for the school system in Germany. And at least they should have access to school systems at all. I know the situation in Bolivia, for instance, and I have seen the situation in Venezuela, where about 90% of children with disabilities have no access to school systems at all. So it's a big deal for many, many countries to open up their schools for children with disabilities. Nice pictures, nice targets, but not reality at all in the world. What about our health system? In Article 26 of the Convention of the CRPD, it means that all people with disabilities should have an equal right and access to the health system. And as Bishop Olivier pointed out in the very beginning, even now in the times of COVID-19, many people with disabilities had no access to our health system and were excluded from what was necessary for this situation at the moment. The next article is the Article 27, work and employment. Do people with disabilities have access to the employment system in your country? I don't know. In Germany or in Europe, many people have access, but in Germany, most of them have only access to a kind of sheltered workshops, which you see on the picture here on the left, or in the middle picture above. We do have kind of new ideas to establish employment opportunities, for instance, in restaurants, in hotels, at the airports, and surprisingly, in the restaurants, the people make very good jobs. Sometimes you say, oh, restaurants are so busy and it's so hard to work in a restaurant, but they have it's surprising how good they can go on in doing their work in restaurants. And one of my friends is in the picture in the middle. This is a young man who was the first working in a restaurant in Freiburg, Max. Max is now for more than 10 years being part of the employment group in a restaurant called Himmelreich, which is almost the same word as paradise, as the bishop mentioned before. The Paradise restaurant in Germany, in Freiburg, has Max and others members with disabilities in their team. But as I said, many people with disabilities have no other choice than to work in a sheltered workshop in Germany. And so we have 300,000, can you imagine? 300,000 people with disabilities working in sheltered workshops. And this is not the real target of inclusion and participation, because they are always on their own together with other people with disabilities, but not in the open employment system of society. At least they have work, but they don't have to stay at home the whole day. But it's a kind of sheltered workshops, and this can't be the last idea for them to be part of the society. Shall we go on to the next slide? Yes, thank you. Because the Article 27 says people with disabilities have the right to work on an equal basis with others and gain a living by work freely chosen or accepted in a labor market and work environment that is open, inclusive, and accessible to persons with disabilities. Many companies have no ideas how they can offer jobs for people with disabilities, and so it needs very, very much information for them, how they can go on. For instance, I have always the example with people with autism. They need very, very special environmental conditions for working in a company, but they can be part and they can put in their capabilities, which they have, of course, but it needs a long work with the companies, much information for them to open up their doors or to open their doors for people with disabilities. People with disabilities in the Article 28 have adequate standard of living and social protection. This is also, well, in many parts of the world, it is so difficult for people with disabilities to be part of social protection. Yeah. So we can go on. You have many experiences in Cambodia or in other countries in the neighborhood, how people with disabilities have, whether they have adequate food, clothing, housing, and social protection as well. Okay. And people with disabilities should I can hear very much on my participation in political and public life is the Article 29, and that means that people with disabilities should be part of political decisions. For instance, in Germany, we had the situation that blind people had problems to take part in the political elections. And so we've tried to find out how it could be easier for them to vote with kind of schabloons, we say. And so we had some election homes, some election offices which were open to people who were blind, but it took so very much efforts to get them into this offices. So at the end, we found out that it would be easy for blind people being part of the election system, that they had schabloons in every election bureau, in every election office, and it was not very expensive to put it down for them. Because people with disabilities have political rights. the opportunity to enjoy on an equal basis with others, to ensure that people with disabilities can effectively and fully participate in political and public life. And now we have a big number of people with disabilities in our community parliaments and so on. Every year we have more people with disabilities in our parliaments. And this is a good way because their experience is needed for political decisions. Okay. The next one and the last one, I think, for the moment is the participation in cultural life, recreation, leisure, and sports. This is also on a good way. I think we have this Olympic Games for disabled people, Paralympics, and so on. We have many groups for inclusive groups with sports. We have inclusive groups for theater, for dancing, and this could also be a part of the academic education of students for social work, that they write down their PhD thesis or their bachelor thesis about groups of people, inclusive groups of people with disabilities and without disabilities, and put it on that more and more groups could be inclusively held. We have, as you see on the picture on the left above, you see a very special basketball game, which is called Baskin. And Baskin is very famous in Freiburg, in Italy, in Europe, that they have inclusive groups, teams, on 5 levels. And some are very, very good basketball players, and some are on a wheelchair, for instance. And 5 people with different situations of playing basketball are in one team, and this Baskin has special rules, who can draw the ball and how many points they get and so on. My colleague Florian Kupis is one of the European-wide known team trainers for this Baskin system. Perhaps we can bring some ideas to Cambodia when we visit you in 2022 or 23. Yeah, this is on leisure and sports, as I said, in cultural life, dancing groups inclusively, theater groups. This gives people with disabilities the chance to be part of the society, and they really appreciate being part of inclusive theater groups, dancing groups, and so on, sports groups. Yeah, this is this part, okay. And as you can imagine, to develop and utilize the creative, artistic, and intellectual potentials, and not only for their own benefit, but also for the enrichment of society, is so valuable that it's a very good idea to open up groups in the church, in sports, in cultural life for people with disabilities. Okay. We met last time in Germany, and see you next time in Cambodia is my idea. I hope we can do so at one day. So this is my last thing. Best regards from our university in Freiburg to the SPI and to Caritas Cambodia and all the people who took part in this lecture. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor. I ask permission to stop sharing screen.
Yeah. So we have 30 minutes to talk about these ideas, if you want to, and to share our experiences in Germany and Europe and in Cambodia or in Asia. What about discussing the ideas which were contents of the
yes,
slides right now?
I think it's the good time now to open the forum for any sharing or any discussion or any question raised. For students, if they have a question, can ask, also can type it in the chat.
Okay.
I saw Bishop Kike also joined the conference. So Bishop Kike is already in this conference. Yeah. So maybe we can hear from NGO or from a teacher who joins this conference. Any reaction or insights or any question can be raised for this time, because it is a good time for the open forum and can share and can hear from each other, especially from Cambodia perspective. Yeah, like Professor said, from Cambodia, from Europe, or from Germany, or from other country, or now me is from Japan, I don't know, so can hear, especially from Cambodia. Yeah. Now is a good time for discussion or question raising. Yeah. Any question or reflection for what Dr. said?
Perhaps my question would be, on the road to inclusion and participation, if we say there are 10 milestones to fully inclusion and participation, how many milestones have we achieved already, and how many have we just in front of us? I think in Germany, I would say we are only at milestone 3, not more. What about Cambodia?
Yes, Christina.
I think maybe we are in the first stone.
But
because what Ratana, what also Father Charlie said about the right of disability inclusion and also advocacy can be more. I am a special needs educator for intellectual disability. I am already 25 years in Cambodia. And I see the difference between 25 years ago and now. But we are still in the way. I think so. Can be the suggestion that you give, I think is very good, because also we can use or we can make more available the right of disability for with the social worker student. Can make a survey, can make more research about how to approach, because I think in Cambodia is missing the advocacy. There is already the right of disability, there is the law. Every disabled need to have the ID poor, the ID card that they can access everywhere, especially the hospital, but we are still waiting. And so only in some place, in some province, I was working in Kamponchinan, I was working with Jesuit in Bantepriep, and now we make a kind of mobile training special education team, because we need to formate people, Cambodian staff, to be also how to approach, how to teach, how to develop also this kind of things. I think so we are on the way, but thank you very much also for the suggestion. I think St. Paul can be a very good place for preparing this kind of thing. Thank you.
And thank you, Christina. Yeah. Any answers to Professor question? Or I ask the question from Piran. Okay.
Yes, I agree with Christine and Christina and everyone idea that I think for the milestone, we are actually maybe in the first step, but we are happy with the progress so far. I think to create an enabling environment and accessible for people with disability is I think is an important point, and we can see there are lots of improvement on policy, law, but we actually really need a lot of advocacy. Like Christina has said that advocacy have to be more for the implementation. We have a beautiful plan. If you go through the national strategy on the Cambodian national strategy on disability, so it's a beautiful paper. But to put this beautiful paper into practice, we need a lot of efforts. So the efforts on advocacy, the efforts on how to say, building best practices, maybe a model, create a different model at the community, at the national model. Yeah. So Caritas Cambodia has been working a lot with Caritas Germany, St. Paul, and other institutions to promote the accessibility, promote the inclusion. So we're working a lot, in terms of physical disability, mental disability, and social disability. So the CCAMH program not focus on health treatment, but we also focus a lot on special education, and we are moving towards the vocational skill training for intellectual disability, and also facilitate the access for employment, because through social enterprise, because now there are also lots of model social enterprise by the church. I think Bishop Kike is here. We have a Catholic factory that employ majority of persons with disability. We have a factory in Battambang. Yeah, I think over 90% of people sit on the wheelchair and they work. We have a factory of Bishop Olivier in Takao. So I think that employs and train people with physical disability and also mental disability, even social disability. So there are lots of models, but we need also a good social worker. Yeah, so I hope we can work together more with St. Paul to produce more qualified social worker that facilitate access. Like we have a policy, we have policy on disability. We have a lot of special benefit on the family and person with disability, but how to facilitate access to that policy, to the benefit, like during this COVID-19 pandemic, the national government has, I think, the additional mechanism, additional financial procedure for vulnerable groups and people with disability, but many of them are not accessible. So facilitate access from a good social worker or a community facilitator is a need. Public awareness, public awareness on social inclusion is a need. We have a law that at least 1% of person living with disability have to employ in any organization, in all the organization, but still, we have to push the implementation. We need to train, because I think there are institutions who provide also the UN Convention on Person with Disability and also the United Nations right on business to many entrepreneurs. It's a lot of improvement. Some entrepreneurs, they accept person with disability. Like I know, I have a friend who is the owner of a hotel in Siem Reap and in Phnom Penh. He employ, I think at least 30% of his staff is a person with disability. It's a deaf person. Yeah. So something already start. But we need to work together. We need to push the policy. We need to push the implementation. We need to develop a role model, for the society. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think Bishop Olivier, he would like to say something. Bishop Kike, yes. Yeah, Bishop Olivier, you want to speak? Yeah.
internet So I want to thank you very much for your presentation. I not open my camera because I have problem with my internet. I want to say thanks for you. I have 4 points that I want to share. The first, I think we need to remember what you said, not only inclusion, but inclusion and participation. So I think that is very important for us because sometimes we just include, put in the room, but forget to give the voice and to make activities all together. So inclusion and participation is good advice for us. One point that I want also to say that we have so many different handicaps, and many handicaps that I am working with, especially in our peace village with the children with very mental disabilities, it's very difficult to include them in a normal school or in the factories that we have or many programs that we have. You speak about bands, about sports. For them, they are just on the bed. But what I want to say that I want to help also in our church, especially here in Phnom Penh. We started the second place to have this kind of daycare center for these children with mental disabilities. They cannot go to school, but this kind of center is very nice because it's become their own school, and they are so happy to go every day from 8 o'clock to 1 afternoon and to have occasion to go out from the home and also to get a lot of improve, because at home in the small village, the parents have no abilities to help them. So we have many miracles. They can walk, they can sit, they can speak, they can recognize the color, they can have a social relation with other people. And this COVID-19 is so hard for them because they cannot come. And I am happy because now we open one more in Kampot, Chumkiri. One more point that I want to say that also it's not easy to work with people with mental disabilities. When I start the factories with Candice that Ratana mentioned, we start with people with disabilities, with mental disabilities, and our people who take care of the factories never meet any handicap in his life. So it's not so easy also. So what I want to say that all organizations who are here today, please find a push to have more students in Saint-Paul Institute to study social worker and also to take this specialization with disabilities, because we need the people to be ready to work with them. And even like Ratana say, we have a policy, we have a nice resolution, we have many beautiful paper. I see many times the right of handicapped people in Cambodia. We have the day, the 3rd of December or 1st of December every year. We have many things, but it's not easy to apply in practical because we lack of workers and the people who have a contact with disabilities and love them.
So I hope we can push to have more students in Saint-Paul. And at least I want to thank you, Doctor, and at the University of Freiburg, who help Saint-Paul to continue their work, and also to help us to be more involved in our social worker. So I hope this cooperation will be for a long time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Bishop. Bishop Kike, you would like to say something?
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. It's okay? Yes.
Yes, it's good.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I participate by talking because of the mentions, but first of all, I want to thank Dr. Clausen for your presentation. Very wise and very nice. Also give a lot of motivation for the people that we are involved with, people with disabilities. When to the question where we are in Cambodia, I will be rather positive. I think we are coming out from war, and we had many disabled people because of the war, because of the landmines and other reasons. And we were able to answer their needs, and not only to answer their needs, also to allow them to participate. Many people who are landmine victims today, they have jobs, they had formation, and they are doing quite well in the Cambodian society. And we have to acknowledge, because a poor country without the infrastructures gave answer to the need of many former, I would say, soldiers, people that had no, access to education in the past, and in the last 30 years, this country did a very good job, very good job. Yes, if you come to Batamban to see the compound of the church, you see so many people with disabilities working and happy, building their families and having dignity in their life. So I would say that we have very beautiful initiatives in Cambodia that make the life of people who suffer disabilities different. We are transforming lives in many cases. Also, another aspect that I would like to say that we have to is that as the country is getting more developed these days, new disabilities are showing their face, and we are not yet prepared. Yes, autism is a big challenge, big challenge. And if it's a challenge in developed countries, what happened here? It's very difficult. Yes, not so easy. So I would say that thinking in our capacity in Cambodia and thinking in we are not doing too bad. I think we have beautiful initiatives, very nice experiences, and I think you make it very well, the presentation, because you put it many different aspects that we are addressing, and maybe what we have to do is how to focus our activity. I think for me today, social inclusion will be a priority, because when we do social education in social inclusion, we do awareness at the same time, no? And for me, will be a very nice step that we get together to encourage together to do this. This, as Bishop Olivier was saying, from you, the inclusion with participation, inclusion that they participate in the ordinary society, so they can bring their voice. Also, sorry, I keep two more examples that Cambodia was very good. One is in the landmines campaign. The landmine campaign, Cambodia brought the people with disabilities to have voice, and their voice went around the world. And today we have an international law. I will say a lot thanks to the Cambodian survivors, because they have voice to talk everywhere. I think I myself, I went with them in more than 15 countries, and we have a model there, a model of giving voice to the people with disabilities to talk about their cause. And this was made in Cambodia just after the war in the 90s. Yes, and I think it was beautiful. And another example that Cambodia, we have good good records of service to the disabled people is that in Cambodia we have a Cambodian wheelchairs made in Cambodia, Cambodian design, and for the needs of this country. And this it has been on for the last 30 years, more than 30 years, producing wheelchairs. So I think local wheelchairs with local design. So I think we have a nice journey, a nice journey, thinking that we are a poor country. The lack of education is for all, not only for the people with disabilities, and the lack of jobs is for all, for everyone, not only for the people with disabilities. So I have to say that maybe the milestone we are in the second to the third.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. I think I wanted to have memory of so many good things happening. Yes. In fact, this meeting is a very good thing. Is put us together to talk about where we are and what we have to do. Well, thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Bishop. Thank you. Yeah. Any reaction or any sharing more from the participant? How about the higher education? Okay.
May I so far give 2 or 3 words to Bishop Olivier and Bishop Kike?
Yeah, yes, please. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for these informations. I know about the victims of landmines. Well, I've heard about it, of course, and read about it, of course. But it's very good that you mentioned this again, because so many disabled people out of the war, of course. We had the same in Europe, of course, in 1945, 1946, 7, 8, and so on. And it took a long time to realize what kind of needs are helpful and what kind of institutions are helpful. And so we are changing our kind of institutions 60 years after or 70 years after the end of the World War II, because after the World War, we had perhaps not the best ideas of how to help these people. And now the kind of inclusion and participation is a new perspective for them as well. But of course, it's so important that the dignity, as you mentioned, Bishop Kike, the dignity of the person is realized, and the dignity in their lives is one of the main topic, of course. And to help them or to open up companies for working possibilities, or to other services, to have an own company for wheelchairs made in Cambodia is a very, very good step. And so many steps are helpful. I had the idea, Bishop Olivier, when you mentioned that for children with very severe handicaps, it's perhaps not the first step could not be to send them into regular schools, because there is so much special need. Christina as well said so. After 25 years of working with them, they have so much special needs that you can't change the school system in a couple of years into an all-inclusive school system. But we have the same situation in Germany as well. In Freiburg, we have a special school, Janusz Korczak School is called. The Janusz Korczak School helps people and families with children with very, very severe handicaps. And one day, parents of these children said, you know, with my 16 or 18-year-old girl or boy, if they had no handicaps, I would take them to a concert hall to be part of the music in a concert. But with our children, I will never have the opportunity to go to a concert hall because they do not fit the system of such a music event. And we talked about that, and then the concert company said, well, if they can't come to us, we go to them. And so we had a kind of inclusive, very, very sophisticated, well, Bach and Chopin and so on, music played in the school by a real concert group, you know, chamber group. And for the parents, it was so good to realize that their children with very severe handicaps were so quiet, were so concentrated listening to this very, very sophisticated music, let's say. It was, and so inclusion is not only to put everybody in the regular system, but to open up the doors or to open the doors for everybody to take part. And this is cultural inclusion, I think, and this is inclusion in sports as well, and so on.
Professor,
yeah.
you have something more?
Okay, it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, Professor. Any more sharing from the...
I do have one more or two
more sentences. Please.
I think you mentioned that Bishop Olivier mentioned that people in society have not much contact to people with disabilities. This also is the fact for students. And so yesterday we had to talk about what kind of ideas we have for the students of social work. And now I'm getting clearer in this, that students should not spend 3 years only on the campus studying social work, and after 3 years get out and have this kind of praxis shock, we call it, and then for the first time work together with people with disabilities. Our experience is that from the very first day of studying social work, students should be in contact and should do some research work, do some practical work, do some, be together with people with disabilities. That it couldn't be the right way to study 3 years without any contact and then go into a kind of NGO or Caritas institution or something. It should be from the very first moment on. And so perhaps it could be also an idea to have a kind of arrangement that students are part of an organization, of a Caritas or some NGO organization working with disabled people, and study at the same time. The way on 2 traces. Perhaps it could be an idea, but we can talk about that later on. I think you know what I mean. It's very important for students to have many contacts.
Exactly. So, yes, exactly. Yeah. It's a good, that is a good idea that we put them in the practice from the first and second years for the study. Thank you, Professor. Anyone wants to share?
Thank you so much. I want to.
Okay, Narit.
Thank you so much, Dr. Clausen, for your presentation. I'm really impressed. And about regarding to the higher education, I'm really interested in the point that the student need to learn by doing, and not just they learn in the class. That's not always for them, And regarding to this point, it's good if we can work closely with the Phum Soksan to let the student to expose and learn from there. Since from I think it should be start from year two, because we also have the course called inclusion in year two, in inclusion education in year two, and also we have the course practice with disability in year four. So I think we can let the student to involve from year two with the people with disability at Phum Soksan. So it's a part of half, I think half in the class and half in the community with the Phum Soksan. So that's my idea.
Phum Soksan is mean peace village. Peace village, yes, that Bishop had mentioned. Peace village, yes.
Okay. The Peace Village is just maybe 10 kilometers from the St. Paul Institute. And we welcome about 25 children with mental disabilities and physical disabilities for daycare center from 8 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we follow more than 40 at home. So it's very easy for our students to have a practice from the year one. Yes. One more point. I thank you for the idea for the journalist. And I say to the director of the social communication who joined here today that we will try to have one handicapped journalist. And also we have the Catholic live channel that we have like a Catholic TV from 6:30 morning to 5:30 evening. And we will push we will put some program or interview of real life of handicapped people. So very good idea. Thanks so much. I stop speak.
Yes, thank you, Bishop. Any more idea or sharing? Or from maybe from Bong Ratana and then Bong Suban, because now we already reached to the time. Thank you, please, Bong Ratana.
Yes, thank you, Paul, and thank you, Professor Clausen, for giving the opportunity of today. Like Bishop Kike said, an opportunity to bring us together. And we are all in the Catholic Alliance on Charity and Development Network. So the CACD. So I think all of the CACD members have lots of models of building social inclusion. And I think it is important that we strongly request the CACD member to work closely with St. Paul. Yeah, to give, I think, a diversified focus for the student, because we have a lot of number of different action, number of different projects in the ground, and please participate closely with the social work department so that the curriculum, so that the training of the social work can be a customized program that fit to the ground reality. Yeah, like Professor Clausen has mentioned, because from the beginning until the graduation, so the social work student should be a practical program with the involvement of the CACD member. I think it will be perfect program. Thank you.
Thank you, Bong Ratana. So maybe moves to Bong Suban, yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Bishop. Good afternoon, Professor Clausen. And good afternoon to everybody. that participate with this meeting conference. I'm Sirebon from Caritas Takai Hospital. Yes, our hospital also we are implement the disability inclusive also through our service. I'm very happy that to learn from the presentation of Professor Clausen. I am appreciated for the inclusion and participation. This is a very good term that we are also consider to implement with our program. Yes. So how we participate, because it should be two sectors from the people, the society and the people with disability. If the society are not support, not encourage them, and they could not participate in all sectors in our society. Yeah. So from our hospital, we provide eye care service. We think the two way we focus on the system, and another we focus on the people, especially for the people with disability. How to encourage them, how to provide a skill or provide a capacity to them that they can equal the capacity to the people not disability. This is one sector that we focus on. Yeah, and another part we have to focus on the system of our institution, how to build the system that they can participate with. For example, like a service in the hospital facility, how they can access to the facility. Yes. So these two things we have to consider and focus them to participate with us. Yes. So we try to work with that since the beginning, and also I have learned from that even the facility new our building also we consider. We also build for everything that the people with disability can participate. And also we train our staff and also encourage the people that with disability also to participate with our service. Like we used to give the priority to when we select staff to work with our hospital also, we provide opportunity to the people with disability, like the nurse or doctor, if they can, if they apply for us, we are give the opportunity to them. Yes, so this is a way that we encourage and let them to participate with us. Yes, and I also, we have a group of Caritas and also the Catholic Association. We should be work together, link, and know each sector that they have professional and also link together and help the people with disability to get the service or sector that we provide. For example, like Caritas, we have a lot of programs that work and should be linked together, how the people with disability can participate on the program. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Just a few words. As now is reaching out the time, so we have only 3 minutes. So if it is possible, I would like to ask permission from Professor and all participants to continue next 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Is this possible?
Not more than 5.
Because I see a lot of idea and sharing, so enjoy sharing this forum. So it's just ask permission 5 or 10 minutes more before we close and we take a group picture. So maybe 1 or 2 more. Okay, now me, Freiburg. Yes, now me. Yes, please. Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
It was a great pleasure for me to be with you on your event. I just want to be thankful to you. I had no idea, but I'm free for your ideas to realize the students' exchanges or internships, anything. Because, well, to everyone, my name is Naomi. I am the head of the international office of the Catholic University of Freiburg. And yes, and thank you, Jens, for your inspiring lecture. I have learned a lot. Every time I learn a lot from you. And due to the COVID-19, we are forced to rethink the international activities. And I think that digitalization is one of the answers to it. Of course, nothing can compare with the great learning effect of the physical mobility, but the digitalization has its advantage. Like now, we are connected, but despite of our distance, and we can share the precious moment and not only the moment, but the knowledge also. So I hope we can keep continuing doing this kind of activities and sharing the ideas and knowledge. And as I told you, I'm free and I will be very happy to do some joint activities to, I don't know, maybe internship exchanges, study exchanges we are doing now. The 2 students of the SPI are coming to Freiburg in the next 4 semesters. And this kind of exchange, we will be happy to continue with this kind of exchanges, but not only the students, but for the teachers or for the organization staffs, for everyone. So yeah, thank you anyway for having me with you on this event. And I'm looking forward to meet you soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naomi. Just want to add to what Naomi mentioned. SPI, through the collaboration with the Caritas Cambodia, Caritas Germany, and Catholic Freiburg, Fleischscience in Freiburg, we are going to send 2 students from SPI for 6 months to do the exchange program or study in Freiburg Catholic University of Fleischscience for 6 months. Yes, in this coming September to next year in February. Yeah, thank you, Naomi, to open for all and for the student and for staff, for teacher and all organization. Thank you very much. Yeah. Any more? One last. Yes, because professor said not more than 5 minutes. Because in Germany is very punctuality. I know.
Perhaps I may say some words. When we started this idea a couple of weeks ago, and I said, well, if it's helpful, I can try to give a lecture on the CRPD. I didn't know that so many people would join this lecture, and it's really a big honor for me to have such an audience. Thank you very, very much for listening and be part of this this meeting today and sharing these ideas together. Because as one of our lyrical heroes, Friedrich Hölderlin, once said, we learn a lot by talking to each other. We learn everything by hearing from each other. And this is the way we can go on, perhaps. And I'm really pleased that you took your time and these 2 hours to be together and to share our ideas. It's very good to hear that as Mr. Ratana said, so many ideas have already reached the government in Cambodia, and that so many good ideas have been implanted in the strategy papers and so on. And now it's the time not only to think about it, but to go the further steps. One example, as when we talk about inclusion and participation of people with disabilities at the university, we sometimes look around and say, why don't we have any students with disabilities in our social work student group or so? We do have some, but not everybody offers his life. But also in a student company, there should be people with disabilities on wheelchairs, people with who are blind or deaf or something, could be also part of academic system. And we don't have so many of them as well. So there is much more to do, and I'm glad, and I would love to go to Cambodia one day, perhaps next year or in 23, I don't know, to talk with you. But as Naomi just said, it's such a good idea to come together on this Zoom conference. I'm very glad that you took your time to listen to what I had to say, and you realized that doing lectures in English is not this thing it's not my everyday work. So my English was also slightly not perfect, but I hope it was okay for you to listen to this. And thanks very much for being part of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. So on behalf, actually Bishop Olivier here, so on behalf of Bishop Olivier and all the staff from St. Paul Institute and all students, and I must say sorry also for those who cannot ask the question or any reaction or clarification. So we hope we have the next step. We hope, we don't know, but we hope to have a next step of this kind of conference. And on behalf of Bishop Olivier, I personally, I would like to say thank you very much to Catholic University of Life Science and Freiburg, especially Professor Jens Clausen and Naomi, the Director of International Affairs, that have very good collaboration and always opens to St. Paul Institute, especially to give opportunity for us. And thanks to Bong Ratana and the Caritas staff, they always support the program of St. Paul Institute and to support in any area. It's a kind of a big help. I heard a lot about the inclusion and participation. But for now, I just want, before close the session, I would like to add also awareness and knowledge and resources is really need for the Cambodian societies. For the higher education, it's not easy to find the right person for giving the lectures to bachelor degree or any student who study for the bachelor degree in social work. I can say the resources is still limited. The milestone that Bishop Kike said, second or third, yes, exactly, on the NGO or implement on the ground, Bong Ratana mentioned or Christina mentioned the first step of the milestone. But for the higher education, it's very good policy in the paper that have mentioned in the Ministry of Social Affairs. But the resource person, as for now, only 3 higher education institutions in Cambodia are providing bachelor degree for social work. First is the Royal University of Phnom Penh, second is the St. Paul Institute, and third, I can say National Institute of Social Affairs is NISA. So if we can see how the resource, so inclusion, participation, knowledge, and resources and awareness also need. So this is the kind of open and collaboration and build more resources from our network. And I believe that we step by step we can build it. And for this, I would like to express my gratitude and thank you very much to all participants, fully participant. And thanks to Dr. Clausen. And today is amazing for St. Paul Institute because 2 bishops joined the conference. It's really help, encourage that show is the encourage us to commit more, especially the member of Catholic Alliance for Charity and Development and Caritas and other organizations. They can work together to have disability and to help Cambodia society to grow. Thank you very much. So the last, I would like to ask the group picture. Maybe if you not mind to open the camera for all. If you are enjoys with your screen, it's okay, but better to open the camera. We can take picture. So SPI team will take a picture. Thank you. Count one. Tira. No, Tira.
នៅលោកគ្រូ
បាទសូមថតបាទសូមរាប់ដើម្បីឲ្យយើងដឹងបាទ
តែតែមានច្រើន screen ហ្នឹងលោកគ្រូអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំ
បាទសូម screen ទី1រាប់ screen ទី2 screen ទី3បាទ1 2 3
សូមមួយទៀតលោកគ្រូចាំមើល1 2 3
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I will share. I will share the presentation to all participants through the different organizations. Yes, Professor. Thank you very much, Professor. Yeah. Bye bye, all participants, brother, sister. Yes.